Well, earlier we saw a prayer led by the Secretary General of the National Council of Churches, Reverend Mzwandile Molo. Let's take you back there now. Katleho Sekhotho is at that prayer service joining us now live. Katleho, we just had the prayer led there by the Reverend. We've also had a number of the colleagues speaking, but I believe you've got more journalists who've been touched by Tshidi Madia and her work.
Thank you, Mr. Mdlulu. It's a sad occasion here, but as the Reverend said, also a celebration of the life of Tshidi Madia, a seasoned journalist, and not just one who cared about her work, but cared about her colleagues, and was committed to seeing young people being educated, but also seeing young journalists being mentored and trained and uplifted in the newsroom. And so as we heard from Spoongalwa earlier on, saying that, you know, she was patriotic in her work in the sense that she held power to account, but also wanted to do that by uplifting South Africa and seeing South Africa reach its fullest potential. But as you correctly state, Mr. Mdluli, I do have with journalists who worked very closely with Tidi. Alpha, I'll start with you. Tidi, you were under her wings. She mentored you, coached you. Take us through your fondest memory of Tidi.
I think the very first memory that I have of Tidi was in 2022 when I started working for Eyewitness News. I had moved from a community newspaper in Pretoria, and I had known about and of Tidi through social media, of course, watching media briefings, seeing her asking the questions, and I got the opportunity to go and work with her, and I was quickly, she quickly took me under her wing. And as a young person walking into a big newsroom like Eyewitness News, it really takes a while to find your feet. It takes a while to find which beat you want to focus on. And within the first month of me being at Eyewitness News, Tidi said to me, I think you should consider being a political reporter. And from that very same month of October 2022, I've been working very closely with Tidi. The first memory that I have with her is her trusting me to cover a big event such as the ANC's National Elective Conference in 2022, where President Cyril Ramaphosa was re-elected as the president of the ANC. And it isn't an event that most newsroom would allow a young, at the time, intern who was still in university actually to go and cover. But Tidi said to me, you might not understand my logic right now, but in a few years' time you will understand. And till today I look back at it and I understand that she wanted me to find my place in the industry as quick as I can. While I'm still in that process, I think her mentoring, her guidance, her teachings, the 3 years that I've worked with her certainly taught me a lot. I don't think I would have the courage to be doing some of the stories that I'm doing now if it wasn't for her and her guidance.
Tabi, so perhaps you can come in here and tell us, how would you describe Tidi and how did you experience her?
I think obviously with Tidi, a lot has been said about what kind of a journalist she was, and she was brilliant. But I think for me, it's outside of that, where Tidi was, she was a full human being. She was very funny. She was someone who was very smart, very sharp. But she was also someone that was also deeply caring about the people she worked with and also the people that, were under her. I think for me, the interesting thing about Alpha and I is that we were the first and now obviously the last people that she actually had under her wing. When we joined EWN around the same time, Tidi had just been promoted to editor. So she had, for the first time, people actually under her. And it was always interesting because I think she learned on the job, but we also learned from her too in terms of how to be led. But she also had to learn in terms of when she worked as a journalist, everything was just, she was a hands-on person. She liked working. But now when she was editor, there was a thing where she had to trust other people. And those people were usually Alpha and I. And I remember, with Tidi, we usually had arguments. But in between these arguments, there was always love. And I remember there's a new colleague that joined us And this colleague heard me and Tidi arguing, and we argued for about 5 minutes. And this new colleague comes up to me and says, Tabis, are you okay? And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I just heard you arguing with your boss. Are you okay? I'm like, that was an argument? I was like, it didn't feel like an argument. Like, but that's the kind of relationship we had where we just argued, whether it was politics, it was about life, religion, everything. And she always saw like beyond just our jobs. She always saw us as humans. And I think just lastly, Katleho, I remember I was on a story in the Northwest and I got a call that my mother in Durban had been to hospital. And I remember calling Tidi, and Tidi just said, drop everything. Drop everything, whatever I was doing in the Northwest, she just said, drop everything and go to KZN. Do you need money? Do you need anything? And that's the kind of manager she was. That's the kind of person she was, who didn't, just, it was about the work, but it was about the human experience beyond the work. And I mean, it's very hard our newsroom will never be the same, and it's very hard to actually come to grips with it because, Tidi was a larger-than-life person, and it's going to be a bit difficult to do this without her, but we'll just have to get used to it.
And Alpha, perhaps just reflecting on the past few days, the outpouring of messages of condolences, not just from media colleagues, but from as high as the office of the president. What do you make of the level of impact that she made as we look at the people who are really passing their messages?
I was having a conversation with my mother this morning, reflecting on the career of Tshidi Madia in the past few years. And I really feel like she has almost completed everything in her career, a full circle moment. Last year during the elections, she had President Cyril Ramaphosa interviewing him on Eyewitness News. I think we're the only media house who had him. She recently had Julius Malema. She's done everything. And for the president, different sectors of society to come out and reflect on the life and times of a person who was my manager just shows to me that I was led by someone who earned their stripes. I remember seeing a message from the PSL, the soccer league, and they were saying every single match over the weekend, they will start them with a moment of silence in honor of the legacy of Tidi. And it just hit me, dawned on me that this person really made a huge impact, not only in the journalism industry, but for the different sectors of society to be recognizing you and acknowledging your role in our country's democracy. It says a lot about who she was and how well she did her work. So while it's a difficult time, it has been fulfilling seeing all the messages. She would always tell us about her relationship with the chairman of the PSL, Ivan Khoza, and how they met. And seeing Ivan Khoza and the PSL honoring her as well, for me, just showed me that I don't think I realized how much of a huge impact she had.
And I guess just a last one for the both of you. As young journalists consider her legacy, read about her as the years progress, what do you hope, particularly those just coming into the field, understand about the field in relation to how Tshidi conducted her life?
A lot of people know me as Tidi's son. Wherever I go, oh, Tidi's son, oh, where's Tidi? And I realized a few days ago that it's because most of the sources that I've developed over the past 3 years, she held me Katleho and said, Alpha, let's go. I want you to meet this source. I want you to meet this person. I want you to meet the president. I want to introduce the president to you. Every single place we went together, she'd be introducing me to someone new. And I really hope that young journalists who are coming into the industry now will have a manager like that. She's one of one, for sure. But I really hope that young journalists will enjoy the benefits of having a manager who cares about your career trajectory, but also your personal life. Like Tabiso was saying, there are times when we're not okay, maybe mentally, emotionally, physically, and we're going through whatever we're going through in our personal lives. Instantly, she'd pick it up and say, Alpha, I think you need to stay home today. Or do you need a couple of days off just to process whatever's going on in your life? That's the kind of manager that she was to me and Thabiso. So I really hope the next generation of journalists will have a caring manager such as Tidi.
And yourself, Thabiso?
I think obviously one of the most important, I'm obviously not as young as Alpha, but one of the things I think Tidi lives behind is, as a journalist, it's very important to read. Read everything. You read the pamphlets, you read the manifesto, you read those code papers, so that you're actually prepared. And I think one of the things that, we saw those outpouring of love, and from a lot of people she actually interacted with, those politicians. And one of the things she told me is that, there's those people that you interview, they don't respect you unless you're prepared, right? There's no point in trying to be friends with a politician, trying to be friends with any person in power. The greatest respect comes from actually being prepared, comes from actually knowing what you're doing. And also, and I think one of the most important things that Tidi did is that she was, for a smart person that she was, she also humbled herself. She'd ask Alpha and I about maybe subject matters that she wasn't as familiar with. She'd also ask some of my other colleagues, whether they're in business, they're in sports, or even sometimes even in politics. She was that humble that if she knew that she wasn't familiar with the subject, she's humble enough and smart enough to actually go ask someone else who knew better, so that she's better educated. And I think that also shone through her work.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Thank you. So, Mr. Mdluli, you've heard it there from two colleagues who worked very closely with Tshidi Madia, that was Thabiso, as well as Alpha, and they were just reflecting on the very huge impact that Tshidi played in their lives, a warm and caring spirit, but also very professional and very committed to seeing young journalists grow and grow.